Let's talk about how AI will change the core of business software with Zeb Evans, the founder and CEO of ClickUp, and a YouTube exclusive brought to you by ClickUp. And I'm thrilled to be here with Zeb today. Zeb, great to see you. Welcome to the show.
Excited to be here, Alex.
So I want to start with you talking about user interfaces. I was having a conversation with an investor yesterday about how AI has the possibility to change the way that we interact with software. So the way that this investor described it was basically, if you think about our desktop, we have a mail app, we have a messaging app, we have a calendar app, we have a browser. These may all have their own separate databases, and none of them talk to each other. And I think in business software, that's like really the case on steroids. Of course, there's APIs and connectors that way. But business software can often fail to be smart because that data and that experience is just not synthesized at all. And I wonder if generative AI, we're seeing the beginning now. Everyone's talking about automation and agents. I wonder if the next step is really going to be a change in the way we interact with the software completely. Because instead of having maybe the AI go and use the software for you, it's possible that the actual way that you interact with these software programs is going to be very different. Someone building something like this yourself, I'd be curious to hear your take.
It will definitely be very different. Although I do not subscribe to the belief that everybody's going to want a single chat interface as their only interface within B2B software. And I actually think what will happen is every AI chat experience will need core primitives. And what we refer to primitives are things like a doc, slides, spreadsheet, kind of database, and of course attachments and files. And those things will need to be built by the AI chat providers themselves. And we're actually already starting to see this. So our philosophy and strategy really has always been that software would converge, that previously very separate niche, vertical, use case specific software categories would converge into one, and that's certainly what we've been focused on since the beginning. I think that what will change in the near future, and something that we are working on, is what we call personalized software, and this is a very it's collaboration software. So you have consistency across the data models. You have consistency across the collaboration experiences and the primitives. But your surface areas for your software, your homepage in ClickUp, your inbox that you come to, your task list, will be extremely different based on which user you are, based on what team you work on, based on your current priorities. And you could think of this, what we think about it as, is almost vibe coding your front end experience for a particular page or feature within collaboration products. And I think that is very much the future, especially as we start to see more software converge. Right? How are you going to be able to put 10, 15 of your previously separate apps inside of one platform without it bloating the user experience and without it being extremely complex? It will need to be very personalized to just the things that you particularly work on.
Okay, I want to ask you a question about something you said at the beginning of that answer, which is that you don't believe that we're going to end up having software that basically condenses everything into one platform. Why is that?
So I do believe that we'll have software that condenses into everything in one platform. That is absolutely what we're focused on. What I don't believe is this notion that you're going to use just AI chat experience for all of your software needs, and that you won't actually need UI or application layers to back that up. And we I think as humans, you always, take chat for example, right? Chatting, team chat. You are always going to want a consistent experience where I can go see the history of all my messages, regardless of how I send a message or receive it. You're going to want a DM that you can go visualize that history of your communications with a given person. And that same thing is true for all of those core primitives. So I certainly don't believe, that everybody's going to want just to have a single AI chat all day long, and they're not going to want to see any application layers or experiences. But I do believe that these separate software categories will all converge. I think AI will ultimately also converge with software.
So there was this sort of semi-famous Zeb Evans tweet or thread, whatever it might be at this point, at the very beginning of the ChatGPT days. And his perspective was, don't think about how you can layer AI on top of like a Microsoft Excel. Think about how basically it changes Excel completely. And I think where he was going with that is basically that business software or something like a Microsoft Excel would be, instead of like putting your numbers into a spreadsheet and then doing calculations on them, you just upload all those numbers into a chat interface and then ask for insights. That's not how you see it going. So you're basically saying we're going to need some of those initial programs, but AI will make them smarter, or tell me exactly where you land there.
Oh, look, ultimately, you need to have it all. And I think this is, it's very timely because you start to see Grok add spreadsheets. You start to see ChatGPT also added Excel spreadsheets and CSV embedded inside of that chat experience. And more importantly, right now, AI, we're in a world where AI is not good at calculating things yet. So generally, you're having to spin up a virtual machine and run Python or something on there to actually perform those spreadsheet calculations. So either way, you have to build both sides of it. So you can start from the spreadsheet, and you can add the chat on top, which is what Gemini did. You also can start from the AI chat, like ChatGPT or Grok, and then you can add the spreadsheet on top of it. But ultimately, you do need both of them.
Okay. And so talk a little bit, you referenced ClickUp, obviously, as the company you run. Talk a little bit about what you're building there. You mentioned that there's going to be, personalized software for people that are using it. How does that work?
We try to give you the best experience based on your intent. And intent is very tricky to figure out sometimes. If you have enough data, of course, it's very easy. So after a ClickUp user is using us for a week, 2 weeks, we really start to be able to personalize that experience pretty much automatically for them. They can give inputs. They can refine how things are prioritized and visualized. I am experimenting right now of viewing my inbox like a newspaper. And like an old school kind of newspaper. We have a branch that I was just trying that out on, and so I do think that it gives you a new level of like creativity and control as an end user that just doesn't really exist today. At least inside of B2B software, I think you can go vibe code something that's consumer-ish, but you struggle with adoption across teams. So I've always believed in massive horizontal platform primitives that are very flexible, that allow you to accomplish any given use case, any vertical use case, and really any core work management or productivity need inside of one platform. Because, similar to, I think, what is getting a lot of attention now with AI is like underneath the hood, why aren't all of these primitives the same? I mean, you just have data models, you have a database with a certain schema, you have services for infrastructure, you have WebSockets, etc. All of those things are very much needed and leveraged appropriately for AI. But they're also needed for they're common core components in any given SaaS application that you have. So we've always taken the approach of build that very flexible. We call it Convergence. The only other company I'm aware of that had a similar strategy is Rippling. They call it compound software. But it's the same approach, and it just enables significantly greater flexibility in use cases and also velocity in shipping product.
So then talk a little bit from an end user's perspective, how they would go through it day to day.
So let's take the inbox, for example. Inbox in ClickUp is kind of a universal inbox for all of your notifications, your action items. You can send events there, emails. And you can imagine typing, essentially vibe coding your inbox and saying, hey, I want these things to appear first. I want everything about AI agents to appear at the top. I want all of the urgent things that mention me prioritized in order 1 through 5 in a second section. And instead of it looking like a traditional inbox, I'll go back to that newspaper example. Make it look like an old school New York Times newspaper. And so it just gives you this kind of like limitless creativity in how you consume your notifications, consume your inbox. And that example can be relevant to really any given surface area, any front end application layer. You should be able to really deeply customize that experience. I think you can go too far if you don't add constraints, and it becomes AI is, look, I'm total optimist in AI, but it's not there yet in a lot of ways, and it certainly is also very costly. It's pretty slow, and it's ripe for errors if you don't give it a bunch of guardrails. So we are taking the approach where we will give it opinionated UI components and framework to build on top of, which minimizes issues that would be created otherwise if you let it do essentially anything.
And so people can customize with natural language.
Exactly.
And you're sitting on top of email? Is it its own email server, or is it something that sits on top of email and various different programs?
We synchronize in real time pretty much any application outside of ClickUp. So
Okay.
if you can connect Gmail or Outlook, and we will in real time bring in all of your emails.
Okay. And so then people can basically prompt their own, not only UI, but dashboards as well. Will it be able to give them new data and ways to look at the data that's coming through their platforms?
Absolutely. That's the power use case you hit on is the dashboard, because it can be used for reporting, right? Those are the obvious things for reporting and analytics, but we're seeing some really cool use cases of people almost like creating their own like apps as dashboards, because it can do more. Our dashboards can do way more than reporting anyway. You can have a chat, I can have a doc in there, I can have tasks, I can have a whiteboard inside there, you can have a spreadsheet. So you imagine all of these like primitives, right? Going back to that primitives analogy, it being created with AI, and if you give AI these core primitives like a spreadsheet plus a doc, plus these widgets that are able to show charts and really embedded anything inside of it, then you can create pretty cool applications and pretty cool use cases. We saw a customer create a bespoke like CRM solution that also had their clients have a very personalized login experience that feels like their company.
Wow, that's fascinating. So where do you think traditional business software is heading right now? I mean, obviously, there's like a lot of talk about, does business software collapse into sort of this singular user interface, or can you replace a lot of it with AI solutions? I'm curious if you think that's the case, and how these hopes might stack against the reality today, which is that a lot of companies are struggling to even implement some of the basic use cases.
I think we're very early still, and things don't change as quick as everyone thinks that they do, right? Everyone thinks there's overnight everything's going to be blown up, but I don't subscribe to that. I do think a lot will change, to be clear, and I do think that software businesses that have a very simple product offering are in trouble for sure. You can argue what will happen with software, but I think everyone agrees that you will be able, and you already are, able to build software much more efficiently than we could in the past. Therefore, every company will build more software, right? Not less. You're going to build more software if it's more efficient, if it's easier to create new products, easier for you to go into different markets. Of course, you will create more software. So that goes along with our thesis of convergence of software, that software will converge. Ultimately, given a long enough period of time, all of your software will be provided by one software provider. I believe one AI provider also. And I don't think that there will just be one of them as far as monopoly goes. I think that there will be several, not that many, but several. And then along with that, you will have this whole new category of what we call bespoke software, where the small business that previously was not able to afford their own customized mobile application now can afford that. We don't believe that those people are going to go create their own, though. I think that there is definitely that notion of software gets eaten because everybody's going to go build their own software. If that was true, everybody would have built their own website by now. I mean, you've had website builders for a decade plus, good ones, really great ones. But that is not the case with the vast majority of especially small businesses. They're not creating their own stuff. They're usually using an agency. They're usually using somebody that's using Canva or that's using a website builder themselves to go do that. And I think that that's what will happen in this next age also.
For a unit software, I guess that's what you would call it, right? This one software system to rule them all. A couple questions for you. What does it look like? I mean, are you able to, does the ERP and the sales database and the marketing database just live in the same product? And then is this something that is going to be built by the incumbents? Like, is this something, you already mentioned OpenAI and Grok embedding spreadsheets. So is this something that's going to be built by these big foundational research houses that need to turn profits, or do you think it will be something that others build?
I tend to think that the giants will build offerings, but it will take them a long time. I think also that the AI labs will struggle cracking into B2B, especially with collaboration. That is like a core block in AI right now of AI chat. It's your own chat, right? You're chatting with your own stuff, and that's it. There is no like element of collaboration. And the context is also missing in the AI labs today, but they know that, right? And so that is certainly part of their strategy in the long term. But yeah, I do think, to answer your question, yeah, I think that you will have one software provider that has ERP system of record. It has all of your customer system of record. It has your marketing, certainly has HR and project management and work management along with team communication.
Okay, but here's where it gets interesting, and that is that some of these companies, everyone owns like a little fiefdom or a little piece of the puzzle. And what happens if the providers end up shutting it off and then making it impossible to build this single software? Here's an article that you wrote in Fortune, I think today. I'm the founder of a $4 billion software unicorn, and I see data wars coming. Enterprise AI, beware. You talk about how Salesforce, for instance, has cut off access in some ways to data from Slack.
Yeah, but I over time, I think that is the reason why you'll see other providers pop up and have all of the offerings in one place. It's a very short-sighted move, to cut off your data access completely, especially for something that is not truly competitive, right? It was more about unifying their data to provide AI value. So what will happen is when context becomes valuable, it already is valuable in my eyes, and anybody that I think has worked with AI deeply, context is really the most important thing. But as consumers and as businesses start to realize how valuable it is and that AI value actually becomes a reality with that context, they will strive and demand all of that context together in one place. And so if Salesforce doesn't offer that, and they don't want to buy from Salesforce, or another competitor comes along and does offer that, that's where I think you start to see these single software providers take off.
So is this basically the Salesforce's move? You're saying is its attempt to become this sort of central unit software? I mean, I was just talking about sales data. So sales data, Slack data. So it's what do you think the move that they're making is basically saying, we want to control and be that singular software player, and we're going to prevent others from doing it. So we're going to limit access from Slack.
I think that is part of the strategy long term. I think that immediately though, they see it as a risk. I think that there's no way of getting around that they see it as a big risk, that they have customers that are exporting all of their data and they're using all of that data outside of their core application, they have no engagement anymore, right? Then therefore they really are just a database. They just are that system of record. And certainly it would make it a lot easier for customers to switch to another provider, a single software provider. Whereas Salesforce, yeah, they will try to provide all of the software, but all of their software is really built in very much in isolation. It does not play well with each other, and it's not great for what I see as the future of software, where you really have to build everything with the same application primitives, the same framework, and the same modules, the same components. That's where you get a lot of leverage from, and you're not going to get leverage from having 5 separate applications, even though they're sold by one provider. You don't really get the same convergence, leverage, and efficiency and productivity and AI context value from that.
Zeb, the whole value of AI that people have talked about is the fact that you don't need everything to be sort of primitivized and structured, and you can take unstructured data from various systems that don't speak to each other and sort of use AI to extract that, synthesize it, make sense of it, and then let you act on it. You don't buy that?
No, I do buy that from a data perspective. It's different versus the front end application layer perspective, right? And they're really two very unique things, because you have the back end platform as the databases, as the data, the context there. But then you have the front end applications where all of the engagement happens, where the humans actually work, right? Where they see and visualize that stuff, and where they engage, where they collaborate, where they actually do the work. Those two things are needed to provide the greatest AI value. You need both of them. You need the context, you need that data, but you also need the engagement. You need that human that is actually using that and providing really, really valuable feedback. This is how we are able to really make incredible strides with the quality of our AI, and the value is the human feedback and these loops that start to happen autonomously, where people downvote something and we learn from that automatically. We have an agent that goes and fixes it really and adds an eval for it. So it continuously gets better and better and better. But you certainly need that unified data in a very digestible way. So it is, to be clear, I don't actually think that, I believe certainly that all of the data in one place is in similar data models is 100x more effective than trying to unify 5-10 different data models and databases through an API. And you can see this, how it works. I mean, if you go connect MCP or even the connections from ChatGPT, you're very, very, very limited on the data that you can access. It sounds cool, but I was connected my Google Calendar the other day to Claude and to OpenAI, and I was like, hey, what are my events for next week? I'm limited to maximum of 10 events. Hey, can you create a calendar event? I can't create a calendar event yet. It's just it's very surface level. What you actually need is to synchronize all of that data and have optimized AI retrieval for that data so that you can get the right context out, because there's way too much context there for AI to be able to actually decipher what matters. You need to be able to first limit that and then give it to the LLM, and that's very difficult to do.
Right. I mean, that's been the problem with Apple Intelligence, I think, and some of the Alexa Plus delays that we've seen, is that when you ask these bots to go in and find some information for you, if I'm reading you right, if I'm hearing you right, the answer is that they just are dealing with just an unbelievable amount of data. They're struggling to pull it out. So how do you then go up and put that infrastructure in to limit and then find the right stuff?
From a data perspective, by the way, we acquired a company a few years ago for enterprise search, and the infrastructure and platform that they built was allowing us to synchronize any application in real time and store that data in a universal database. So a data model that is consistent across the board, regardless of what application it is. We can plug into HubSpot and Salesforce and Slack and your task management platform if it was outside of ClickUp, and we can synchronize that into one database in real time with permissions and privacy aware. And this is what we optimize for AI retrieval. So our agents understand this singular data model. It can do semantic search in one place. It doesn't have to go kick off 10 APIs and then try and pull that back together and then do re-ranking. It's very slow, and it just doesn't work at scale using APIs to do that. So certainly this is where the world will be headed, is actually unifying that data into like a single database. And I do think that's part of the reason why Salesforce started putting up those walls, is because they do want to be that provider. They want that database, that full universal data model inside of their ecosystem, not somebody else's.
And so how do you adapt if they put the walls up like that for the Slack data, for instance?
Well, it's been a tailwind for us because, and I think it will continue to be, because we have our team chat product, which is our fastest growing product by far, and it's accelerated the growth ever since Slack did that. There is that I would say it's more early adopters that care about it right now, that see that, oh, holy shit, like I want to get away from this. I need to be in more of like an open system. And they started, switching to our ecosystem. And I think over time, as people see more and more value from context, and team chat is extremely valuable context, right? The most up-to-date information generally is going to be there. As people see that value is there, they will demand more ecosystems that are friendly and allow you to pull in your data and kind of use it freely without being handcuffed to a single Salesforce provider if they don't even have the other offerings. I think that's the difference here too, is we have a lot of customers that they use Salesforce and they use ClickUp for everything else, right? They have Salesforce as their CRM backbone and ClickUp for everything else, and so Salesforce doesn't have a ClickUp offering, right? So they can't even, to your point earlier, like, maybe they'll get to that world where they do have an offering for everything, but they're not there right now. So what they're doing is they're forcing customers to separate their context. There is no way to unify the context. Even if they want to pay $1 million, you can't really do it in Salesforce today.
Interesting. So in the early going, my thought was maybe you would have a set of companies that are databases, and then a set of companies that might, draw from those databases and be the user experience on top of it. But I think what you're saying is it isn't going to be two separate ones. Like the only way to make this work is everything is in the same one together.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
Figma's doing it too. Why is Figma also? It's one that you've listed as well.
Yeah. They are, and I think if I was them in their case, it's hard to say, is it the right decision? Is it the wrong decision? Because in Figma's case, they do have that engagement layer, like where people are actually working. They also have the platform, the data platform layer, like the source of truth of designs, and the very detailed specs along with that. It's not just a screenshot. They have all of the actual components within the wireframes. And they started locking it down too, where we were previously synchronizing all of your Figma prototypes, and you could search across them, and you could do AI across the prototypes. And recently they notified us that they are deprecating that across the board, not just for us, for everyone. And so that will be a bit of, I actually think that it will create problems where consumers are pissed off because they're using their favorite vibe coding tool right now and they're trying to plug it into Figma. And when that access gets cut off, you have to go use Figma's product, right? Which is I imagine that is kind of the intention here, is to go use their Figma Make product for vibe coding rather than using something else over time. I think maybe over the next quarter or 2 quarters that's what we'll see. So they are certainly headed towards that same direction though, the convergence and trying to get provide a single offering platform that provides nearly all the software for their given market, which is designers right now.
Yeah, it's interesting because your headline was, there's going to be data wars. And I was like, oh, is wars too strong of a term? But no, it really is. It's going to be like real business wars here.
Absolutely. It will be wars for sure. And I think you're going to end up like waking up every day And so I think you'll see another headline of this company cut off this access to this access, and you're using your tool that you thought you were using to control everything connected to it. But those connections will certainly stop, I think, as convergence continues to happen.
All right, Zeb, I want to end here. There was this MIT study that I'm sure you've heard of it. 95% of businesses, I'm getting tired repeating it already because we've talked about it so much. 95% of businesses get no ROI on their AI spend. Let's not talk about the study. I'm actually curious to hear how you think about calculating ROI on enterprise AI. Like, what is the right way to calculate ROI on enterprise AI spend?
Time saved is what we care about, and that is easier said than done to measure it. But directionally, you can start to measure efficiency. It's going to sound like I'm selling it, but it goes back to you have to be able to see all of the context. You need to be able to see everything in order to measure efficiency. Any given missing context just throws all of the data off. But I would say that high level, I'm not surprised at all. What we've always focused on is the engagement piece. Everybody can, go take the latest, most complex agentic platforms and build something cool for an agent, right? A cool use case for an agent. But what matters is humans actually using that agent, right? At the right time, the right place, in the right way. And I believe that ambient AI is the future here. And this is where we started to see the value really cracked. Of course, you can ask Brain, our AI product, any question about your work or outside of your work. Great. But it requires the human going to AI to ask that question. And humans default to asking other humans questions, right? It's very hard to change behavior. And so what we started doing was every time a human asks another human a question, we just ambiently sit there and see if we can answer this question with 80% confidence. We will actually just answer it. We will intercept it and answer it automatically. And we've answered over 1 million questions automatically without a user asking AI. They're asking an actual human to do that. That's where I see the real value coming from, is where AI is really just providing the value automatically, or asking you and confirming you that to provide the value. But it's just doing it there. You shouldn't have to go invoke AI to realize the value from it.
More proactive AI.
Proactive AI.
Okay. Yeah. Zeb, if people want to learn more about ClickUp, where do they go?
ClickUp.com.
Okay. All right. Well, you heard it here, folks. ClickUp.com. Zeb, thank you so much for coming on the show. Great speaking with you.
Thanks so much for having me, Alex.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll be back on the feed soon.